Well, the elections on Saturday will have a major impact on the state level. All 39 seats in the state Senate and all 105 seats in the state House are up for election. As Tan Trung reports, the races aren't getting much attention, but could have ripple effects on a national level.
I'm here because I'm for them.
The Louisiana governor's race is getting attention from the White House. But if you don't know who's running to become your state representative or state senator, don't feel too bad. The volume around the gubernatorial election may be too high for voters to hear anything else.
They're not getting as many messages about legislative races. But the truth is, the legislative races are just as important as the governor's race.
Because of term limits, 144 legislative seats are in play, the most since 2015. But already, 52 of those races are basically over because there's no opposition. If those numbers don't mean much to you, Eyewitness News political analyst Clancy Dubo says you should reconsider.
Our state lawmakers have enormous influence on the day-to-day lives of voters. When they pass abortion laws, when they refuse to raise the minimum wage, when they refuse to pass equal pay for women.
And these state races could have larger implications beyond Louisiana. The U.S. Supreme Court will soon review Louisiana's anti-abortion law, which started in the state legislature.
And things like the anti-abortion laws, if you're for them or against them, doesn't matter. They have national impact because it's now being considered by the United States Supreme Court, which could set a precedent nationwide.
Those are high stakes for races which so far have had relatively low profiles. Tan Trung, Eyewitness News.
Our political analyst, Clancy Dubo, says he expects the GOP to retain control of the legislature. He says something to watch on election night is if the Republican Party can win enough seats to override a governor's veto. And the